Hi folks, my name's Dan. I'm the communication manager here at Enlightened Equipment, and today we're going to talk about the when, how, and why to redistribute the down in your quilt. So generally, redistribution is going to be needed if you start to experience cold spots or your quilt is not performing up to optimal performance. A few things that can contribute to down distribution issues are clumping in the corners, uneven balance of the down, and in more extreme scenarios, dirt and oil and grime buildup. If that is the case and cleanliness is the main issue regarding your cold spots or down distribution issues, we highly recommend getting the quilt cleaned first. So when it comes to balancing out and evenly redistributing the down throughout your quilt, we tend to notice there are some problem areas. We'll discuss those shortly, but the first thing we typically recommend is just laying the quilt out flat. We have one laid out here. It's really well evenly balanced right now. We do have it folded in half just for the limited space of our table, but we recommend laying it out fully flat and getting a good sense of how the down is balanced currently. We typically do not recommend hanging a quilt up vertically. It's going to give you a really uneven down balance. A lot of the down will migrate into the bottom, and we can kind of see that happening with some of these display quilts behind us here. This orange quilt here, we could see this area, a lot of the down has started to shift out of it and it's wanting to settle down into the bottom. One of the great things about down is its amazing ability to compress, and that's what's happening. It's compressing internally in the baffles. So if you do hang a quilt up vertically and you're seeing the down migrate into the lower half, it's not an indicator of it being underfilled, it's just the down itself is compressing. It's doing exactly what we want it to do. So getting back to the quilt laying out flat, we tend to notice the major problem areas tend to be down, clumping up along the top of the baffles near the neck, and also around the corners of the curve in the baffles here and along the bottom. Those tend to be the areas which, let's just say it's like a down traffic jam. It's bunching and it can kind of get compressed into those areas. So those are usually where we tend to find uneven down in quilts bunching up in those areas. So here we're looking at that same quilt. I've gone and kind of messed it up. I've really sort of forced the down into the top and the bottom. This is a really good example of an uneven distribution. This is in a very extreme case. Something like this would rarely ever come up, but we're using this just really for demonstrative purposes. So in these kind of scenarios, the thing that we talk most about, or we really want to impress on you to identify problem areas, is just pressure. It's all touch base. If you're moving your hand along the baffle, where the down gets more and more compressed or clumped up, it's gonna have a lot of pushback to it. You'll feel it. It becomes very obvious when you're moving your hands along the quilt. It's kind of a hard thing to visualize, and we're certainly doing our best here to give you an example of that, but a lot of this is just gonna be feel-based, touch-based. You'll get a sense of it very quickly once you lay out a quilt. I'm just gonna kind of use some techniques real quick and kind of fill this center area back in. One of the main ones that we use, probably the most common thing, is just sliding the down through the baffle. It's actually pretty easy. You're just sliding your hand along that baffle and you're using the air internally to just sort of force the down back and forth. You can kind of see doing it here. It's already starting to even out a little bit. I did push a bunch up into the top and bottom here. There's a lot more pressure here than there is here. So this is probably a good example of what you may end up with as a use case scenario, where it's a little underfilled here, it's a little overfilled here. If I place my hands on these baffles, I can very easily feel that there's more pressure here than here. So what I want to do is balance this out. I'm just trying to even this out. One thing that is also a great technique, if it's really clumped up, is just slapping that area. If you just slap that bunched up area, you can see here, it immediately just drives all the down out of that section. That was actually pretty balanced there to start with, but up here, where it's really clumped up, I want to break some of this up. If I just start slapping this in here, I can now move the down throughout the rest of that baffle area. So generally, those are your two major techniques. It's just going to be moving down back and forth through the baffle, kind of trying to even it out. If you come across a high pressure area, a nice easy solution right here, it's a little strong. It's just light slap. You're not hitting it very hard. It's just a snap. So basically just doing those few things can allow you to start to balance this out. One of the other things too with our quilts is the curve in the baffles down at the bottom here. There are some instances where the down is kind of migrated in here and we kind of want to pull it back up around this corner. It's the same technique. We're just basically moving the down around that corner. And that's all you're doing is slide your hand along the baffle, be aware of the shape of the baffles, and just move the down back and forth through it. So once you get it into a scenario that looks a lot like this, it's pretty even all the way around, you just kind of run your hand over the whole quilt, kind of back and forth. What you're doing here is you're just gently balancing out the down, moving it around, evening it out. And that's all we really want to do, is we just want to get it nice and even. If you then take your hands and kind of just work your way around it, you should feel fairly even pressure all along the quilt through every single baffle. So now that we have a pretty good understanding of just the basic principles of moving down around within the quilt, one of the things I can talk about is just maintenance. One of the things I do when I'm out on a trip, I'm backpacking, when I pull my quilt out of the stuff sack, I generally lay it out on my sleeping pad, very similar to this, and I'll just quickly even it out. The act of shoving it into a stuff bag or a dry bag, compression bag, anything like that, has a tendency to move some of the down around it. I usually like to shove the quilt in from the foot box first, just because of the horizontal baffles along the bottom help to trap the down in that area. But I'll lay it out real quick, quickly balance it out, get it ready for use, and the same applies to every night I use it. Just quick 15-20 seconds, kind of even it out. Then when I get home from a backpacking trip, I'll generally lay out my quilt for a day or two, let it fully air out, let it get fully dry. Always want to make sure the down is getting stored dry. Once it's laid out and it's all nice and dry, I'll just quickly move the down around, get it nice and even and balanced out, and then I will throw it in my big storage bag, throw it in the gear closet, and forget about it until next time. The act of just doing those little bits, those little steps of maintenance should help keep the down nice and even throughout its use, and you should never really have to spend more than a minute or two evening out the down. That should help just save time in the long run, and just the act of practicing that will give you a much better sense of how the down moves around in the quilt, and it'll just make your experience that much more enjoyable. So that about wraps it up. We kind of covered all the simple techniques. Hopefully that'll allow you to get a better understanding of the down distribution in your quilt, help you enjoy it a lot more, and give you some nice little tips. If you have any other ideas, any other questions, feel free to comment below. We're going to be making a series of videos kind of addressing some of these stuff, and we like to hear what you would like to know about.